the law relating to overseas entities, courtesy of legislation that became law as of April, but which bites and which has impact as of the 5th of September 2022. Legislation was introduced in April rather swiftly to counter Russian involvement in UK property as a consequence of the war in Ukraine. There is argument that the law has been drafted quickly and that the law has some potential problem areas, but as residential conveyancers and indeed commercial property lawyers, it is important that we are aware of the change in the law and its implications for us with regard to conveyancing. The first thing is that an overseas entity is any entity, company or individual or trust that has an overseas residence, and therefore any company or overseas entity that isn't based in the United Kingdom, so is based in Southern Ireland or elsewhere, is an overseas entity for the purposes of the legislation. It is therefore important to understand that an overseas entity will require registration at Companies House in order to deal with the land or property that they own. The relevant legislation is contained in the Act of Parliament that was contemplated as long ago as the sort of winter time, passed in March 2022 and became law as in April and became operative, as I've mentioned, on the 5th of September. The relevant legislation being the Economics, Crime, Transparency and Enforcement Act 2022. So what are the issues for residential conveyancers? Well, the issues are this: where an overseas entity is buying or selling land, it is necessary for that land to be registered at the land registry, for the overseas entity to be registered at Companies House. It will be given a unique identification number and will only be given that number, will only be registered if someone is able to verify the owners of the trust or the owners of the entity. That's not just the legal owners, but the beneficial owners. And the problem with that is someone has to verify that identity. And as far as that verification is concerned, it would appear that the verification must be undertaken either by an accountancy firm or law firm within the UK. So if you can imagine that you are buying a high value London property from a SPV that is a limited company that's registered in the Virgin Islands, registered in Gibraltar, registered in Hong Kong. In all of those circumstances, it would be necessary for someone to verify the ownership of that entity, not just the legal ownership, but the beneficial ownership. With regard to the Virgin Islands, with regard to Gibraltar, that might not be a particularly difficult task. If it's Singapore or Hong Kong, with an entirely sort of separate jurisdiction, it could be difficult, if not impossible, for a UK accountancy firm or law firm to verify legal owners and to verify owners of beneficial interests to the satisfaction of Companies House. Significantly, if you are verifying or attempting to verify an overseas entity and you get things wrong and verify a company or an entity that should not have been verified, thus enabling it to register, you commit a criminal offence. Further,